Hello, BookTube. What a difference a day makes, huh? The living room here is suffused with sunlight out of a bright, bright blue sky. The rain that was threatening all day yesterday kept threatening and threatening and threatening until I thought, well, all right, the worst you've been able to do is spit on me a little, so you're obviously bluffing. And then after midnight, the sky opened up. It rained buckets all night long. Buckets. To the point where there are gutters, huge stretches of gutter all around here that are actually flooded. No major flooding in this location, but where trash cans are sitting down to their third, where you can't go anywhere near the curb because there's just an ocean of water. I've got a tiny little dog, so she can't go tromping through water. She doesn't like water anyway, but she would be up to her head and beyond. That happened all night long, and I mean it continued. I read all night long about a pope. But I read all night long, and every hour I kept expecting this is surely going to let up. And even when the sky was starting to lighten just a little with dawn, it was still pouring rain. I thought, okay, well, all the predictions that I watched and some that I was able to work out myself said, yes, it might rain at night, but it's not going to rain tomorrow. That when sunrise happens, the rain will be over. And I kept thinking, is this true? It's still pouring rain, but it did. It ended. No hint of rain today. Just a bright, beautiful, warm, sunny day. And that pouring rain last night, coming down in buckets outside, did not deter the ninja mailman. I still got a mail delivery late at night on Saturday. Why that happens. So I want to go through that. We've got a couple of packages we can open. I also want to revisit something that I showed you the other day. I got the New York Review of Books. I have now read this. And there was one piece in here, oh my, I can't help but think that they are going to get a lot of mail for this. It's by David Cole, and the piece is called Let the Decision Stand, which is incendiary right there. This is about a recent blatantly unconstitutional ruling that was done in Texas that essentially stops women from having abortions in the state of Texas. It doesn't explicitly do that, but it was written so that it wouldn't explicitly do that, because there's no way the Supreme Court could not act on that. But it comes close. And its most infamous provision is that it empowers vigilantes among the citizenry. If you're somebody at the end of your block you suspect might be visiting an abortionist, you can rat them out for money, for a huge bounty of cash. A purely Texas way to go about things, just revolting. And for an article to say, let the decision stand, is amazing. And I read it with mounting confusion, wondering, this is an author writing about Roe v. Wade and writing about everything that has followed in ways that I confess I do not understand. I'm going to read you just a little bit of this. We don't have to delve on it too long before we get to mail. Another important reason why the court gave in Casey for upholding Roe v. Wade. Casey was a previous serious challenge to Roe v. Wade, in which the Republican justices on the High Court affirmed that Roe v. Wade makes sense, that it is sound legally, and that this challenge is not sufficient to overrun it. So Casey is mentioned throughout this thing as the last time there was a really serious challenge to Roe v. Wade. And the other important reason why the court gave in Casey for upholding Roe was something called stare decisis, which is that, okay, in addition to anything else, this is already a ruling of the court, and it has long standing, and we have our name to think of, we have our seriousness to think of. Roe had been on the books for 2 decades and had been essential to securing women's equal status in society during that time. By 1992, the court noted, in a generation of women had grown up knowing they could rely on the rights ensured by Roe. Stare decisis, which protects such settled expectations, is no mere technicality. As the court has explained, it permits society to presume the bedrock principles are founded in law rather than in the proclivities of individuals. The court's legitimacy and authority rest on this principle. At the same time, stare decisis is not an absolute command. Decisions are, on occasion, overturned, but it's rare and requires consideration of multiple factors. Have other cases developed legal principles that leave the precedent an outlier? Has experience proved the rule unworkable? Have the facts changed in a material way? And would important expectations be upset if the precedent were abandoned? The court considered all of these factors in Casey and concluded that they did not support overturning Roe. The very same conclusion holds today. That's where the author loses me. We'll go on to the end here. Constitutional doctrine sometimes evolves in response to changes in the community's understandings of fundamental norms. Brown v. Board of Education reversed Plessy v. Ferguson, in part because the court and the country recognized by 1954 that separate was inherently unequal in a white-dominant society. The court recognized the right to marriage equality in 2015 because the country's understanding of the fundamental dignity and equality of lesbian and gay people had dramatically changed over the previous 30 years. But the country's views about abortion have not materially changed since 1973 or 1992. If anything, the principle that women have a right to decide whether or not to terminate a pregnancy is more widely accepted today than it was when Roe was announced. It is wholly unlike segregation or marriage equality. So Cole is saying there has been no sea change in societal understanding of this. And if society hasn't changed its view, then that means it boils down to people. The only thing that has changed, in short, is who sits on the court. And if we are to be ruled by law and not by men, that cannot be a sufficient ground for reversal. As Justice Kavanaugh wrote 2 years ago, quoting the great 18th century legal commentator William Blackstone, stare decisis ensures that, quote, the scale of justice does not, quote, waver with every new judge's opinion. Even if Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett might not have joined the Roe majority in 1973, they cannot simply ignore 50 years of precedent safeguarding a right that is central to women's autonomy and equal standing. As the three then recently Republican-appointed justices who reaffirmed Roe in 1992, overruling, as they said in 1992, overruling Roe would, quote, do profound and unnecessary damage to the court's legitimacy and to the nation's commitment to the rule of law. And Cole finishes with, that is only more true today. And that mystifies me. That absolutely mystifies me. What does he write? Even if Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett might not, they simply cannot ignore 50 years of precedent safeguarding the right that is central to women's autonomy. Well, they could have prevented this Texas law from going into effect, and they didn't. That is them condoning it. And the next challenge for a suit that's making its way through the upper courts in Mississippi is one in which they will simply agree that the Texas ruling was right and that the Mississippi ruling, which is even more draconian, is also right. So I don't know why Cole is saying that they can't ignore that. Of course they can, and they have already done that. But the thing that really mystifies me is that business about what's really changed is the people who sit on the court. And that, as Kavanaugh wrote, imagine citing legal opinions by Brett Kavanaugh. Just makes my skin crawl. But, okay, fine. You could make a theoretical argument that you don't want to be challenging stare decisis because the current crop of justices on the court just happen to have different opinions. That doesn't matter. What matters is, what stare decisis says is that what matters is the settled opinion of law. But I think that's drastically undercut if you are on the court because of your opinions on one subject. All three of the justices, these sham faux justices that Cole mentions in this article, were chosen by the president who appointed them to the court for only one opinion on one subject. That changes everything. That means you're not a roving, legal scholar who will decide cases based on where the law comes down or where precedent stresses. Instead, you're an ideologue who was put on the bench in order to do this. that seems to me to ruin that argument. And I can't wait to see what kind of response this piece gets in the New York Review of Books letters page. I will, of course, report back to you. I imagine it's going to get a lot of irate responses. He's basically saying, nah, which is not the response that horrific Texas law has elicited. So we will see. If it sparks a storm, I will let you know. But then we have the packages. These poor packages that were delivered on my doorstep in pouring rain. Let's see what we have here. If there's anything interesting. You're just completely in the habit now of Sunday mail, even though mail is not technically delivered on Sunday in the United States. Let's see here. Oh my. Okay, the paperwork that came with this thing is an invoice. So that does us precious little good. But the book is by Asef Bayat, and it's called Revolutionary Life, the Everyday of the Arab Spring. Oh my. Okay, so who is Asef Bayat? He is a professor of sociology and Catherine and Bruce Bastian Professor of Global and Transnational Studies at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. At Urbana-Champaign, the University of Illinois, that particular campus is quite the thing. And he's written 2 other books on the modern Islamic world, including one on the Arab Spring. So what have we got here? From the standpoint of revolutionary politics, the Arab Spring can be seen like a wasted effort. In Tunisia, where the wave of protest began, as well as in Egypt and the Gulf, regime change never fully took hold. Yet if the Arab Spring failed to disrupt the structures of governments, the movement was transformative in farms, families, factories, souks, and schools. My immediate response is to say, do you have evidence of that? But I guess that's what this book is. Seamlessly blending field research, on-the-ground interviews, and social history, Asif Bayat shows how the practice of everyday life in Egypt and Tunisia was fundamentally altered by revolutionary activity. Okay. Women, young adults, and the very poor, and members of the underground queer community can credit the Arab Spring with steps towards equality and freedom. Those are pretty odd-looking steps. Unless you mean steps backwards. But no, you're saying steps toward. There is also potential for further progress, as women's rights in particular now occupy a firm place in public discourse, preventing retrenchment and ensuring that marginalized voices remain louder than in pre-revolutionary days. That is 100% not true in Egypt. Unless maybe it is, and this author knows more about particular enclaves than I do. And maybe he's going to make this case mainly based on other places. Let's see here. In addition, the Arab Spring empowered workers. In Egypt alone, more than 700,000 farmers unionized during the years of protest. Did not know that. Okay. Labor activism brought about material improvements for a wide range of ordinary people and fostered new cultural and political norms that the forces of reaction cannot simply wish away. Well, no, they can't wish them away, but they can't impose a curfew. I mean, the military is in firmer control of... Anyway, in the author's telling, the Arab Spring emerges as a paradigmatic case of revolution. Not revolution, with an F, revolution. Revolution that engenders reform rather than radical change. Is that a coinage of this author? So, revolution. Okay, all right, well, I can't wait. I don't have a sheet for this. I'm assuming that this is a November release. We'll just have to see. I'm eager. I'll read it tonight, no matter what it is. It's got to be a November release. And then we have this cardboard thing. It's a box, but it's so small. It practically can't hold its head up as a box. Whatever's in here is tiny. I'm expecting some very big things. Another invoice. I'm expecting some very hefty items in the mail. This is not going to be one of them. This may even be a slim volume of poetry. No, it's not slim volume poetry. Okay, all right. This comes out in March. Oh, too bad. It's right up my wheelhouse. I would like to read this now. This comes out in March. This is by Justin Smith, and it's called The Internet is Not What You Think It Is. A History, a Philosophy, a Warning. I love these kinds of books. Do we have anything? I don't have a sheet, so okay, here we go. Fortunately, they printed it on the inside here. This is going to be a $25 hardcover in March. Many think of the internet as an unprecedented and overwhelmingly positive achievement of modern human technology. But is it? In this book, the author offers an original deep history of the internet from the ancient world to the modern world, uncovering its surprising origins in nature and centuries-old dreams of radically improving human life by outsourcing thinking to machines and communicating across vast distances. Okay. All right, so if that summary is correct, then this book is mostly sheep-dip. And we don't get any further than the first sentence to know that. Let's keep going. Maybe we recover some ground. Yet, despite the internet's continuing potential... It's okay. Oh, it's got some continuing potential. Okay, that's great. Are you being watched by a satellite right now? Is that satellite governed by the internet? Are you in contact with anybody except in any means other than through the internet? Do your children spend more time with the internet than they spend with you? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, it has a glimmer of continuing potential. That's really great. That's like saying, well, for human life, despite oxygen's continuing potential. Uh, let's see here. Despite the internet's continuing potential, Smith argues, the utopian hopes behind it have finally died today, killed by the harsh realities of social media, the global information economy, and attention-destroying nature of networked technology. Okay. Ranging over centuries of history and philosophy of science and technology. Well, yeah, but you shouldn't be doing that. I know that's what you're saying that your book is doing, but you shouldn't be doing that. The internet is a new thing. It's not me being part of a complacent, sleepy patriarchy to refer to it as a new thing. It is a new thing. So you talking about Babylonia. anyway, he draws fascinating connections between internet user experience, artificial intelligence, the invention of the printing press, okay, communication between trees, and the origins of computing in the machine-driven looms of the silk industry. At the same time, he reveals how the internet's organic structure and development root it in the natural world in unexpected ways that challenge efforts to draw an easy line between technology and nature. You can pull the plug on a computer. You can pull the plug on a computer. You can't pull the plug on a tree. You can kill it, but there are seeds and roots that you can't see. Okay, all right. The internet is not part of the natural world. It is an invention of human beings, a new invention of human beings. So you talking about the way the tree roots, I assume he's going to talk about how they communicate with each other so that your forest that looks like a bunch of individual trees is actually touching and communicating with each other below ground in ways that we are only beginning to appreciate in their complexity and their longevity. We keep in mind, if trees in a patch of your forest actually are able to communicate data of some kind to each other in their interconnected root network underneath the ground, well, then they can have been doing that for 100 years or 1,000 years. That's a lot. That's a big deal. But anyway, the thing that bothers me about this, again, I'm picking on the publicity detail here. I have no idea what the book will do. I'll find out next year. The thing that bugs me about that sort of thing, when you say, let's talk about the internet as a function of the natural world, is that the internet was created. And I have often found that in books that try that sort of thing, what they're doing is Trojan horsing the idea that the natural world was also created. It wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't. So we can... Anyway, I mean, that business about the silk industry and the Industrial Revolution, that's going to be looming. The data cards that were used to regulate looms. And to draw any kind of equivalence between that and the internet is infantile. It might be interesting in a way that shows me how the author's mind bounces from one subject to the next, but it doesn't have any bearing on what the internet is. Yes, people had to develop those particular cards, and they were the beginning of what you could say is technology, of computer technology. But no one from the next warehouse over could affect your cards. And the weaving machines, the gigantic looms that your cards were used to set and preset, didn't remember what the cards were like. They were big winches and wheels and levers. They didn't remember anything. They aren't equivalent in any useful way, and they take up space. Books like this that try to do that kind of thing just end up jabbering about this stuff, and they get to the heart of their contentions in the last chapter, which makes reviewers irritated. Anyway, combining the sweep of intellectual history with the incisiveness of philosophy, show me a work of philosophy that's insightful. And this isn't even insightful. This is incisive, meaning INCIV, meaning sharp and to the point. read Being and Nothingness? Does that seem sharp and to the point to you? Have you read Wittgenstein? Does it seem sharp and to the point to you? No, of course not. It's the opposite of that. There's no incisiveness in philosophy. As the standard quip goes, I refute it thus. Kicks rock. But anyway, the internet is not what you think it is. Cuts through our daily digital lives to give a clear-sighted picture of what the internet is, where it came from, and where it might be taking us in the coming decades. Oh my. Okay, so if we're talking about interconnected tree roots, I am assuming this author is a member of academia. I know. I just assume that. If I'm hearing highfalutin nonsense, do tell me. Yes, Justin Smith is the professor of history and philosophy of science at the University of Paris. Has he written anything that he lives in Paris, lucky him. But has he written anything that I know? He wrote a book called Irrationality, A History of the Dark Side of Reason. He wrote a book called The Philosopher, A History in 6 Types. And he wrote a book called Divine Machines, Leibniz and the Science of Life. I think I've read any of those. Okay, well, it's a philosopher's look at the internet. Don't have to worry about it until next year, so that's not on my plate. Whereas this thing, Revolutionary Life, I think I'm going to argue with the author, but I can read it right away. I'm pretty sure this is probably a November release. They must be coming from warehouses. God bless book publicists sending stuff anyway, even though they're not sending it from their desk, where in years past, if you've been watching this channel for an unconscionable amount of time, in years past I would have got not only a pub sheet put in this book by a publicist, but probably a little sticky note too, saying, wondering what you think about this particular thing, please give feedback, that sort of thing. That doesn't happen anymore because the publicists still mostly aren't in their offices. They're still at home 2 years later. But that is our little mail haul for today. That plus a rabble-rousing New York Review of Books piece that I suspect is going to get a lot of attention in the next issue. We shall see. I'm going to spend most of today, a chunk of today, walking around outside with the little bean because this last week has been very, very damp. Lots of rain, predictions of rain in every day, and she doesn't like that. Even if we go out in a dry patch, she doesn't like it. She doesn't like that rain is anywhere around. Rain is nowhere around today. I don't think it's going to rain for another week solid here. So I'm going to spend large chunks of the day doing that and also an enormous amount of writing. I'm going to leave sometimes during the day, I'll be here on the fainting couch and I'll be writing and then I'll think, I'd really like to take maybe a couple of hours off to read. As long as it doesn't involve me moving. I'll close the laptop and take a couple of hours off to read. But today, I think it's going to be all writing. I'll save all the reading for midnight when I turn into a pumpkin. Although part of that tonight is going to be the start of NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo starts tonight at the stroke of midnight. Tonight, NaNoWriMo starts. So I usually turn into a pumpkin at midnight every night where I shut off everything, all connection with the outside world. No notifications on the phone, no notifications on the iPad, shut off and power down all of the computers to get rid of all of that and just read until I feel like stopping. Read sometimes all night or sometimes for many, many hours. But the NaNoWriMo forces an exception. NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. I look forward to it every year. And it starts tonight. And I know exactly what I'm doing. My story has been building in my mind. My enthusiasm for writing it has been building in my mind. I don't think I'm going to experience any last-minute switcheroos. I think I'm going to be writing the story that I've been planning for a while about a young man who gets a bargain tablet on the equivalent of eBay for almost no money, specifically because it's technically a newer device than the one that he has been using. It's just, it won't do him any good with all of its fourth-rate knockoff gray market bloatware on it. It's a very simple thing. It happens thousands of times a day. He knows that bloatware is on it. He gets the device because he is convinced that he has followed enough tutorials to know how to root the thing, how to get all that bloatware off it and change it into a blank slate machine, the clone of whatever major device it's imitating. And he does that. Something gets into the process. It's him and the device when he gets it in the mail. It's him and the device and something else when he's finished rooting it. And the test here, the challenge that makes NaNoWriMo fun, for me, the fun is not, can you do this? Right? Because I've done NaNoWriMo many, many times. I wrote novels before NaNoWriMo existed for friends that I circulated on a weekly basis, chapter by chapter, in Samizdat fashion. And I also write for a living. So looking at NaNoWriMo, I don't think, can I do this? I write certain amounts of words, a numerical word count, every single day. So I know that I can do it. Instead, for me, I can do that aspect of it. For me, the thrill of it is in coming up with new challenges, things that I'm not sure I can do. And this one is going to be like that for a couple of reasons, but the main formal one will be, can I slowly unfold the novel in steps while steadily building the tension? That's a tremendous undersung skill, and I don't know that I'm all that good at it, so I'm going to give it a try. That's what I'm going to be emphasizing on for Lentaku World. So I'll be doing that tonight, but I think mostly I will be writing all day. I'll be doing non-NaNoWriMo writing all day, and then I will concentrate on that tonight, and I'll get some reading in. I'm sure that I will. But I think today is going to involve a lot of happily walking around outside. Happily here being the effective word. Because I don't know how many of you you probably haven't been looking at the comments field of my Dune movie review. Right away we can see when we look back at that Dune movie review, I was at least wrong in one prediction. The movie is going to make its money back. It is going to get greenlit for a sequel. I don't think I've watched it once since I made that review, and my larger contentions that this is a murky, portentous mess. I don't feel, if I were wrong, if that were just some sort of fanboy bitter sour grapes immediately after watching it a couple of times, I think I'd start to be feeling whether or not I was wrong by now, and I don't. I think that's probably going to be my settled reaction to the movie. And certainly it's been the settled reaction of a lot of you, including a lot of people who've been emailing me who did go to this thing in a huge IMAX experience. That was my one worry, is that the fact that I didn't see it in the sense overwhelming gigantic screen maybe means that I missed something. But a lot of you did, and you're writing to me saying, I might disagree with you about a little point here or there, but I agree with your overall point that this is a disappointment. But certainly, if you look back at that video, I'm certainly wrong there in predicting that this would not make back its operating budget. I think it's going to. I think it's going to make a huge profit. I think it might be the beginning of a Dune franchise. God help us all. But in one of the comments on that video, you probably don't read the comments on my videos, but one of the comments on that video, the commentator obviously had never watched this channel before and said, I really like the effort and the passion that you put into this review, but I can't help but notice that your visuals are really bad. And you could have millions more viewers if you would just improve them a little, just spruce them up. I was just horrified. Millions more viewers. I don't want millions more viewers. I'm happy with the ones I have. I don't want any. This is a 12 channel, not 12 million. God help us. So I gently pointed that out to this commentator. Something about the comments, something about the way the original comment was worded, did not give me the sense that this is a bot. I try not to respond to bots. So it seemed like a person, just someone who had never seen any video on my channel and was just found this because they were looking for Dune reviews. You always have to watch for that, right? If you're a booktuber, you always have to watch for that. If you make a video that stands alone and is vulnerable to a search, like for instance, if you get a new Kobo and you decide, I'm going to break away from talking about books for a minute, I'm going to make a video just about the Kobo. Typically, that video will get skyrocketing views, but they'll all be strangers. There'll be people who found it because of the subject matter. Same thing is true with a movie review. Oh my God. A lot of you watched it, yes, but a lot of people who don't know anything about my channel, never watched a single video, have watched that video and sent me either emails or left comments. And I looked at this comment and thought, all right, well, I think you're a real person. You just don't have any idea. You're not reading the room, as the Zennials will say. So I left a gentle comment saying, I don't want millions of viewers, thanks. I appreciate that you notice that my passion is real. That is not feigned. It is absolutely true. I get worked up about all sorts of things, as you'd expect from a tussle-haired 20-something. Then this person wrote back. The person responded by saying, I should invest in equipment, all that sort of thing. I should make all sorts of edit jump cuts and whatnot. I should just do a more professional job. Because then, inevitably, if you're going to say that to somebody that you don't know, inevitably the only way that you can follow it up and justify it is to say, because it would get you lots more traffic. So I had to say once again, I had to leave a comment once again saying, I don't actually want much more traffic. I don't want millions of viewers. I know that's hard to get through. Because so many people on YouTube, not BookTube, but so many people on YouTube are entirely governed by that sort of thing. And I'm not at all. Person seemed to be taking my resistance to the idea of sprucing up the visuals in my video as hostility. There was no hostility on my part at all. None. All I did in the second comment was say, it's pretty obvious you've never watched any videos of mine. Maybe you should do that before you give advice. And then the person responded again and said, well, all sorts of abuse this time around. It was all sorts of insults. It was the two comments were about as long as this little thing could go in semi-civility, and then it just broke down into flame wars, which I'm not going to do. This person wrote their final comment was saying, well, I'm not going to watch any of your other POS videos anyway, and maybe if you had better visuals and a more professional product and more viewers, maybe you wouldn't be so miserable. I thought, okay, you really haven't watched this video if you think I'm a miserable person. That is kind of strange. Even enemies of mine would probably say that's wide of the mark. He's kind of happy. Anyway, why did I get on that business? Why did I get on that? Oh, right, because I'm going to be walking around happy today. That was my the original thing that got me going down that line, is that the Bee and I are going to have a very happy day, which is kind of strange, you'd think, for someone as miserable as I am. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. That was the Sunday mail. We'll get more mail tomorrow, won't we? Don't I remember that there's some sort of quasi-holiday lurking around in this coming week in the United States? I could swear that I do, but I kind of remember that. Well, we'll deal with it when it happens. I'm sure that stuff will come in the mail. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.